Hey y'all, I'm going to show you how to make bases for your little houses. I really like doing a cardboard base, usually corrugated cardboard, and using all different techniques. So let me show you some of the fun ones. Well, this is one I use coffee stirrers to make the deck, to make the pier, and I just thought that was really fun. This one's called Sea Shack. This is one of my batwing houses. Isn't that cool? The batwing. And you can see the steps that I cut into the corrugated cardboard. Again, it's just cardboard. And there's room to put a light inside. This one is another batwing house. But look, I cut the steps a little differently. It's kind of on a rocky outcropping. Again, just bunches of layers of cardboard. I've actually got a LED light. Let me see if I can find the little switch. Turn it on for you. I taped it in place. There, it's turned on, but it's really hard to see because of all the lights. But anyway, that is another one of the batwing houses, and that's free on my website, the batwing houses. And then this one. This is called the Sea Worn Beach House, and I decided to make it like a little island, like it's on a little island. So I just cut some irregular shapes of the corrugated cardboard, glued them together, kind of tapered it to the top, and then I painted the bottom part a light blue and kind of edged it a little bit around the edge, like darker, like the ocean was darker, you know, the sea, and it gets more shallow over the sand. And I think there's even kind of a little white layer. And then I did sand, and on the back I used kind of a darker sand. I also used these little shells that I believe my mom collected when we were little from a long time ago. So that is the Sea Worn Beach House. And again, it's a free pattern in my website. But I'm going to show you how to make these. So I'm going to switch cameras now so you can see the construction a little better. But I know you're going to have fun with this technique. Oh, I just wanted to say, I think it makes them a lot safer. I think it protects the house. So if you tip it over or something, the house has got basically a border around it that protects it. So, you know, we put a lot of effort into our crafts. So, you know, I want them to last. So that's one reason I almost always do a cardboard base for my houses. Okay, now to the construction of the bases, of cardboard bases for little houses. First, let's talk about the simplest base, which is just some regular cardboard glued together. This one has about 3 or 4 pieces of cardboard that I glued together and just painted. So it's a really simple one. And that's the same kind of base I made for this house, which is Spooktacular House number 1. You can see it's just a couple of layers of cardboard. I cut a hole in the pattern for this house. There's a hole in the bottom so you can fit an LED light in there. These little LED lights are 1.5 inches in diameter. So I make the hole just a little bit bigger so that they'll fit inside. And when I cut with the machine, I usually cut with a circle. But if I have to cut something out by hand, I do a square, especially on corrugated cardboard. It's much easier to cut a square than a circle. Okay, that's the simplest. And let me show you. This is an unfinished version. Let me show you this unfinished version. And again, it's just 3 layers of cardboard, and it's real easy. And I just use regular glue to glue it together. When I'm making thicker bases, I usually use hot glue because it doesn't warp as much. If you use a lot of glue on these, which I tend to do, sometimes they get a little wet and they'll kind of bend and stuff. In that case, I just kind of put them under a mat or put a weight on them so that they will dry flat. But it's just regular cardboard. This version, this kind of cardboard is 22-point cardboard, and it's really easy to cut, and it's easy to cut with a Cricut machine or a cutting machine. Or you could use a paper trimmer. This cardboard is thin enough that it's easy to cut with the paper trimmer. All right, now to more advanced ones. So this is corrugated cardboard. These are the ones that I use for my bigger houses, like this Sea Shack. It's about 4 layers of cardboard, and I cut it with my paper trimmer. And when I say paper trimmer, I mean one of those kind of heavy-duty paper trimmers, like it's called a guillotine cutter. So it'll really cut thick cardboard. And usually 4 layers is good enough. I think my glue gun, I actually have a glue gun ready. Let's see if it will work, if it's hot enough. Yes, and I just put down kind of a bead of glue. You know I'm an over gluer, so I probably put down a lot more than you need. Line it up so that that's one disadvantage of hot glue, is you really have to line it up quickly so that it's not all wonky. There we go. Layer number 2. Put the glue on layer number 3 and apply layer number 4. And again, line it up. And that is the actual cardboard portion. Now I've got one that I'm going to make real quick. I made this little house on my Cricut Joy. I wanted to see if the pattern would work on my Cricut Joy, and it did. This is the kind of the mini version. I reduced it to a size that would cut on the Cricut Joy, and it needs a base. This corrugated cardboard is actually the strongest. I think it's called faced cardboard because it's got one really strong layer on it. So let's glue these two together. This is a tiny house, so I don't need, there's not really room for the LED light to fit inside. So I'm just going to do a plain base. So I've glued these two together. Now the next thing I do, especially for Halloween houses, is I get some brown packing paper that I just get with any kind of, that you get with the packages. And I crumple it up because paper folds better. It's easier to get around corners and stuff when it's kind of wrinkled. It's much more flexible. And I'm going to use Mod Podge, assuming I can find it. This is Mod Podge, and I've got it in a jar. Not a jar, a little container. This is my container of Mod Podge. I am actually going to put on gloves just because it makes such a mess. Normally I wouldn't wear gloves, but on video, for me to do all the stuff I need to do, it's easier to take gloves off when I'm done. So just kind of an old brush, and I paint my cardboard with Mod Podge. And you could use any kind of white glue, but I try to use stuff that's a little less expensive. So the glue I use for gluing houses together is a little more expensive, and so I'm just using the Mod Podge because it comes in big containers and it's cheaper in terms of volume. So you could actually dilute a less expensive glue like Elmer's Glue All or something that comes in a big jar. And then this one's easy, or relatively easy, so I'm just going to kind of wrap it. Actually, I'm going to flip it over because I want the nice sides without a seam to be on top, kind of like you wrap a present. Now it's for a Halloween house, so I like the wrinkles. I don't really worry about the wrinkles, rather. And on some of them, I actually want them to wrinkle. If I want it to look like stone, like veins of stone, like stone wall or something. And that's our base for this house, for this little house. And it's going to look good on its tiny little base. And the nice thing about having small houses is that you can put them in spaces easier. You don't have to have some big space. Okay, now I want to show you how I paint, how I apply the paper to a larger design. Okay, I'm going to wrinkle up my paper again. Paint the bottom. And I like the paper to be on the bottom because it protects it. If it, happens to get wet or something, at least there's a layer of protection on the bottom as well. I had a bigger brush for this demonstration, but one of my cats kept chewing on it, and then I put it up and hid it for myself. I don't know where I put it. And you can kind of peel this glue off of your cutting mat if you use the cutting mat as protection. So, all right, let's lay it down. See, it's a nice wrinkly surface. Looks like stone. And let's see if we can bring some of these edges over. And because it's a Halloween house, I don't worry about wrapping it so that it's really neat. I don't care about that. If you're making a Christmas house and you want it to be really precise, then you can kind of wrap it like a present. You can get some really pretty papers and have a really pretty base too. You could actually use like a wrapping paper. I still think if you use wrapping paper, it's kind of thin. I would probably put a layer of regular paper underneath. Oh, and somebody asked if you could use like a paper bag. Yeah, a paper bag material would be good. It's thicker than this packing paper, so again, just crumple it up so that it's more flexible. Okay, we can kind of poke a hole through. And if you want more texture on your base, then just, wrinkle up more paper. You want it to look like kind of veins in the rock. Just crumple it up. That's generally what I do. I like that. And that is how you make a base. And I've got one here that's dry. Okay, this one's dry. See, don't you like that? All that little kind of crackly look. Won't that look good with the little Halloween house? Okay, now I want to show you a little more about making a layered base, like the island. So I cut these out of corrugated cardboard. You can see the corrugations here. The first layer, I use my house as a template. This is a prototype. It's actually a prototype for one of the houses we're going to do later in my Spooktacular event. So I kind of trace around it so I see how big the first layer has to be. And then I usually cut it with a craft knife of some sort. A bigger knife. This blade is actually, and I'm going to probably look pretty clumsy. This blade is actually kind of dull after all the cutting I've done. But I also found out that it works pretty well with my scissors. Of course, these are paper scissors. Don't get in trouble for using the fabric scissors. And this thickness of cardboard works pretty well with my scissors. And that's easy and a little safer. Let me make it a little narrower. It's safer than the big craft knife. Okay, the other thing is I marked a center hole. So if I want to do the lights, let me show you the Sea-Worn Beach House again. So you can see the lights. So I've got all these layers and then one layer in the middle so that a light could shine through. So in that case, I do think you need a craft knife. Just because it's hard to start in the center of a piece of cardboard with scissors. There you go. I'm not going to do it on the others. Okay, so I've done all these other layers, and I marked kind of what I want the back to be. These are all kind of erratic, so I just put a little line so I'd know how to line them up. And I want the front to be larger than the back, so I kind of scooch them all like that. And trim this one a little more. And what you would do is cut out the first layer and then draw a circle so you know where the light goes, and then cut it out. And I would make a template of about just over 1.5 inches so you can cut it out and kind of line them up so you can tell where the lights go. I'll show you another way to light up your houses a little later in a different video. Okay, but I wanted to show you kind of how to do steps, and let me draw them. So this will be a step, and we can do like a little cutout here, and then a cutout here. And if you want them to get progressively bigger, you can do that. So let's cut these out. This one I probably need to use my craft knife. And it's okay if the cardboard bends because we're going to layer it with so many layers. And I think this will work. Nope. I have to leave a room for a step. Okay. See, there's a step. Actually, I am going to cut that out. And the nice thing, I always say this, is we're doing Halloween houses. It's okay if it's not precise. We're not doing some, beautiful castle thing. We're doing Halloween houses, so our steps can be kind of erratic, like you're going up some spooky winding stone staircase. See, doesn't that look good? And then the other thing is, when we cover them with the brown paper, I kind of do a strip that sort of joins the steps together. Let me just add. I'm going to glue these 4 layers together so we can kind of see. Do the first one. A hot glue gun. Actually, this is not the way to do it. This is the way to get burned. I think it works better from the bottom. so that you're not, let's do that. About out of glue. There we go. So now to cover it with paper, I'm just going to kind of show you the stairs part. Oh, also paper has like a direction to it. So if you're doing strips, figure out which way tears easiest and tear your strips in that direction. Let's paint this. So you want to tuck it in each step so you get the dimension right. See, now we've got our steps leading up to our spooky house. And so you'll still do the same kind of thing, but maybe not as precisely for kind of these terraced areas. If you want to fill them in, you can. In other words, if you want them to be more, you want them to be flatter, then you don't have to accentuate the layers quite as much. And you can add extra layers. In other words, to kind of fill it in, just keep adding layers of strips of paper and adding detail. And it takes a little while, but I just think it's fun. It's kind of, a little bit sculpting with paper. See, I took my gloves off. You can tell I'm happier without the gloves because I can kind of feel and get in the corners and make it the way I like it. Yeah, let's do a wrinkly one. All right, then the next thing after you've finished this, after you covered it and let it dry, then the next important step is to paint it. And whenever you're painting over dark brown paper or some paper where you don't want, say you use newspaper and you don't want the words to show through, you have to use a primer. And I use this gesso. This is what I use, this gesso. But really you could use any kind of paint. It's just like if you're painting your house and you want a wall in your house and it had a dark color and you're painting a light color over it, you have to use a primer. Otherwise, you have to do so many coats of paint to cover up the previous color. So I always paint it with a white layer of gesso, and then I paint my other colors on it. And I think the trick, or at least this is what's fun for me, is doing layers of color. So sometimes I'll do like a black or a brown or a gray, and I'm like, I don't really like that. And then I'll go over it with another color, and until I get like layers of color in it, and that's when it really comes to life. See? Let me see. It's kind of shiny, but I think you could see that it's starting to look good. It's starting to look more like an island or a rock outcropping. And let me see if I can show you some of the color variations. All right, I'm going to put this one aside for now. Okay, so you can see all the different colors. Like I've got some black in there, some gray. I got a brush with just a little bit of white on it and kind of edge some things in white to make them show up. I did some different colors kind of in the crevices and then overpainted with some gray. Apparently I even used kind of a gold shiny. I think that was a spray I used. So, but see how the white kind of shows up and it makes it look like real stone. So, but it's just a matter of playing with it. It's not like do this, this, this. It's try a little black. If your shadows don't show up enough, use some black. If you want to accentuate the edge, like it's catching some sunlight, then put some white on it. So use different grays. If you look at stone, there's so many different colors in it. So that's really what I tried to mimic when I made that. Okay, that is how I make my bases, my cardboard bases for my little houses. So I hope you will join me. And this is the Batwing House, and it is on my website. We'll have a link in the description. And I will see you for our next live tutorial. Y'all have a good day. Bye.